Welcome to this analysis, everyone. Today, we're going to unpack the anatomy of a true crisis. We're taking a deep dive into the absolutely harrowing, real-world events of the Maersk Alabama hijacking. Now, you might be thinking this is just a story about a ship being boarded, but actually, scratch that. It's so much more. It's literally a masterclass in survival, quick thinking, and high-stakes psychological warfare right out there on the open ocean.
We are not terrorists. We are businessmen. Wow. Just let that chilling quote sink in for a second, okay? Because this is exactly what the hijackers claimed the moment they boarded the ship. It immediately establishes the bizarre, almost surreal reality of this clash. You have heavily armed men treating a hostile takeover like it's just, a standard financial transaction. And they're squaring off against a crew whose lives are suddenly, terrifyingly hanging in the balance.
So I want you to really picture this scene with me. Imagine you're on the Maersk Alabama. It's a massive cargo vessel sailing deep into notorious pirate territory off the coast of Somalia. You and your crew, completely unarmed, zero weapons. And suddenly, out of nowhere, you were forced into a desperate fight for your lives against men armed with automatic weapons. In this absolute nightmare scenario, your words, your wits, and your intimate knowledge of the ship are quite literally your only weapons against guns. Crazy, right?
All right, let's dive into this. Phase 1, detection and protocol.
The incident doesn't actually start with a bang. It starts with a simple blip on a radar screen. As the skiffs close that nerve-wracking distance to just a mile and a half, Captain Richard Phillips realizes exactly what is tracking them. He immediately gets on the intercom and says, "This is no drill, this is a real emergency." And with that single definitive command, boom, the entire atmosphere on that massive ship instantly shifts. The whole everyday routine of a commercial voyage just completely evaporates, and pure survival mode kicks in. Behind the scenes on the bridge, all that frantic dialogue translates directly into a super strict, step-by-step emergency protocol checklist. First, they immediately contact U.S. Maritime and the UKMTO to report the incoming threat. Second, they get the ship's fire hoses ready to literally, physically repel boarders. Third, they securely lock every single external door. And finally, and most importantly, they begin the frantic process of hiding the crew deep in the bowels of the ship. And here's how fast it all went down. This timeline captures the agonizing race against the clock. At 1.5 miles out, they spot the skiffs. Just 1 minute later, they're on the radio pleading for help from Coalition Warship 237. 2 minutes after that, a massive glimmer of hope. The warship confirms a military helicopter is just 5 minutes away. But then, disaster. Right when they need power the absolute most, at the 4-minute mark, a catastrophic mechanical failure strikes. The ship's engine suddenly completely shuts down.
Which brings us to Phase 2, evasion and the inevitable breach.
Now, up until that engine failure, the crew was actively fighting back, using evasion tactics. Initially, one skiff actually retreats, but the second one relentlessly closes that half-mile gap. And the crew, they did everything by the book. They attempted 5-degree left and right maneuvers to create a massive disruptive wake to lose the skiff. They pushed that humongous cargo ship to its absolute maximum speed of 18.5 knots. But despite all those textbook maneuvers, that sudden, devastating loss of engine power effectively strands them. They are dead in the water. And because of that, the pirates are able to pull right up alongside, attach a hook and ladder, and successfully board the vessel.
So now they are on board. Phase 3, the lockdown strategy. The pirates are now literally on the ship, and in those critical, panicked moments right before the bridge is breached, the most mundane word you could possibly imagine becomes a literal lifeline. Captain Phillips establishes a secret password, supper time. He tells the crew hiding below deck that under absolutely no circumstances are they to come out, no matter what they hear over the radios, unless they specifically hear him say supper time. It's such a brilliant, simple failsafe to protect his men in the dark. To survive the breach, Phillips issues these rapid-fire tactical orders, essentially trying to turn this enormous cargo ship into a defensive maze. He orders the crew to lock the control room immediately. The crew is then sent deep down into the sweltering heat of the engine room to hide behind these giant metal cylinders. He tells them to split up, too, into small groups of 3 or 4 so they can't all be found at once. And most crucially, the absolute golden rule. He warns them that if the pirates do come down, they must keep them away from the generator and engine controls at all costs.
Moving on to Phase 4, the standoff and demands.
So the doors to the bridge are finally breached. 4 armed pirates violently break in, bringing us to this incredibly tense face-to-face confrontation. And the contrast here is just wild. On one side, you have the hijackers' bizarre justification. They just keep repeating, "We are businessmen, we just want money," acting as if pointing loaded guns at unarmed sailors is just standard corporate negotiation. On the other side, you have the captain's grim reality. He is desperately trying to buy his crew's safety, effectively trying to pay a ransom right there on the spot just to get these men off his ship.
And exactly how much was that desperate bargaining chip worth? $30,000. Yup, 30 grand. That was the amount of cash they kept in the ship's safe. Captain Phillips boldly offers this specific amount to the hijackers, just praying that a pile of quick cash will satisfy their whole "we are businessmen" claim and end this terrifying siege right then and there. But, as we know, it doesn't end there. Phase 5, psychological warfare and subversion. Unfortunately, 30 grand just isn't enough for the pirates. The ship is dead, the power is completely out, and raw firepower is now met with sharp psychological warfare. The pirate leader issues a terrifying ultimatum. He threatens to execute one of his hostages every 60 seconds until the rest of the crew comes out of hiding. Every 60 seconds. And what does the captain do? Well, in an absolute heart-stopping display of leadership, Phillips literally throws himself directly into the line of fire. He yells at the pirate leader that if he's going to shoot anyone, he needs to shoot him. He effectively calls the pirate's bluff, offering himself up as a sacrifice. So the crucial point here is how Phillips actively weaponizes his intimate knowledge of his own ship. To stop the executions, he agrees to let the pirates do a full deck-by-deck search for the hidden crew. But he uses the darkness and the total lack of emergency power as the perfect excuse to insist that he personally guides them. It's a total Trojan horse move. His entire goal here is simply to stall. He wants to keep them distracted, confused, and as far away from that engine room as humanly possible. Let's actually map out what I like to call the distraction tour. Every single step Phillips takes is a totally calculated move. On the upper E-deck, he starts the search, faking full cooperation just to lower their guard. Then, as they make their way down, he intentionally stops on the A-deck, the kitchen area, suggesting they take a break. He is actively building false trust here. Finally, when it comes to the engine room, he keeps finding little reasons to delay their entry, knowing full well his men are hiding in the pitch black just beyond those doors. And here is where his situational awareness truly shines. While they're in the kitchen, standing with these adrenaline-fueled gunmen in a sweltering, powerless ship, Phillips turns and asks them, "Would you like to eat something? There's watermelon." I mean, wow. It is a stunning psychological play. By offering a simple piece of leftover breakfast watermelon, he brilliantly diffuses the rising tension, buys precious minutes, and successfully keeps the pirates out of the engine room just a little bit longer. Which leaves us with this final, really profound thought to consider. With the huge ship completely dead in the water, the power entirely out, and an unarmed captain literally leading heavily armed hijackers into the dark, complex underbelly of his own vessel, who was truly in control of that situation? It completely flips the dynamic of a hostage crisis, showing us that sometimes strategy and psychological resilience are far more powerful than the weapon in your hand. What an incredible real-world event. I really hope this explainer gave you a whole new perspective on this incident.